Why wait to earn the degree you deserve? You have the experience, you have the knowledge. Now's the time to get the credit for the work you've done and earn the recognition you deserve by starting your comeback at Purdue Global. It's time to earn a degree you'll be proud of, a degree that employers will respect. It's never too late. Never too late to come back stronger and move forward in your career. Start your comeback today at purdueglobal.edu. Purdue's online university for working adults.
Simple Truth brand makes it easy to find better-for-you products that are free from unwanted ingredients. From fresh produce and snacks to household cleaners and more. You won't find artificial ingredients, preservatives, or harsh chemicals in Simple Truth products. So you can fill your fridge and your home with simple, easy-to-understand choices you can feel good about. Just look for the green Simple Truth circle to get the quality items you want, free from the ingredients you don't want. Simple Truth, exclusively at Baker's.
Episode 323, What Financial Independence Looks Like Today, with Brad Barrett of ChooseFI.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today we are having a conversation with Brad from ChooseFI. So this isn't an interview like typically when we bring people on, we're interviewing them so that you can take away like actionable tips to do something that we are not confident in our own ability to do. But this is a conversation that I personally really wanted to have about financial independence, and there's literally nobody else that we would have it with other than Brad of ChooseFI.
I mean, he's been in the game for a very long time, has a really nice approach, approachable, attainable, kind, and we're really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you. There are, I think, things you can pull from it, but not tips, do this, then that, but more mindset approaches for all of us as we think about the big picture of our finances.
Yeah, this is, and again, an episode for me, because I have been so, quote unquote, on fire, so into the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I've been really into it and I've been really out of it because I've seen some of the toxicity that can come from extreme FIRE pursuance. I've been like living in that. And one of the biggest reasons I think for the catalyst of financial independence to become more inclusive has been the ChooseFI podcast. It's also been a catalyst for like a lot of extremism in the movement too. But I have seen so much growth, and we'll talk a little bit about all the different names for types of FI, like all that flexibility, which in my mind is just like, okay, well, if you're just saving a normal amount of money so that you can retire on time, sure, it's FI, but you just have to come up with a fun name for it, I guess. So you're still in the community, but really it's just normal, financial health. So there's just been so much room for that and to still be included in the financial independence movement that I've just been so interested in the movement, quote unquote, towards this more inclusive. So if you've ever thought about financial independence and thought it's not for you, this is a really good episode for you. Or if you are really into financial independence, I would say this is still a very good episode for you. And that's probably why you're listening, because you are already a big ChooseFI fan. And I think you will not be disappointed. But first, this episode is brought to you by Pre-K. It's not quite kindergarten, but definitely not daycare. While daycare can cost half of your salary, Pre-K can be free. Shout out to Florida for having the largest state-level free preschool program in the nation. This is especially nice when you have 2 or more children under 5. Speaking of free, we want to tell you what's free. Free food, free events, limited time promos, anything that you can get for free so that you can have the most fun with the least money. And we do that every week in the friend letter. Plus saving tips, spending hacks, all of that. So become our friend at frugalfriendspodcast.com/friend letter and go get yourself a free treat while somebody else watches your 4-year-old.
This is just good across the board. And I'm glad to hear Florida's doing something right.
Yeah, right? Thank you, Florida, for this. All right. So, financial independence. We used to cover financial independence a lot more back in the day. I was a writer covering essentially investment and retirement, but mostly the FIRE movement, if we're being honest, because those were the personal stories everyone wanted to hear. So I've done like a dozen personal profiles on people in the FIRE movement, but we haven't covered it in a long time because there was just like this really movement to extremism that felt very unattainable. But we tried to cover it a little more kindly. So we have a few financial independence episodes, including episode 152, which is Financial Independence 101 with Jamila Sufrant. She has always been somebody who covers financial independence with a lot of grace and wisdom. So Jamila hosts the Journey to Launch podcast. So highly recommend her show and also that episode. And then episode 73, Financial Independence Through Frugality. I mean, there's always been a joke that you can't reach financial independence if you don't make a lot of money. And we talk about kind of that idea in this episode, but we've always had the idea that it's not the rate at which you save, but the intention with which you save. And so that's kind of our idea.
If your thumbs can scroll that far.
Right.
Through the archives.
Right.
To episode 73.
Yes. But if you're not familiar with Brad Barrett, he's the host of the ChooseFI podcast, which is a podcast about choosing financial independence. He's a personal finance expert, a certified public accountant, and he has had a passion for financial independence and helping people take action to make their lives richer. So whether that's wealth, but also health and ultimately happiness. And he achieved financial independence at 35. And he's a wife, 2 daughters. So family is super important in his rich life. And that comes across a lot in this conversation. So super excited to share it with you.
Let's do it.
Brad, welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. We are so excited to have you here.
Yeah, this should be fun. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
You are such an OG, like stalwart of this industry and particularly this conversation. And we know too that FI and FIRE has changed somewhat over the years and particularly the last decade. You've been in it for a decade, probably longer. Curious to hear your perspective at this stage on what you would say about how financial independence has changed over the last 10 years. Like, how would you define it now?
That's a great question, Jill, first off. And I think a lot has changed on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm not sure that the fundamentals have necessarily changed. So at its essence, financial independence is saving money until you reach a point where your assets can kick off enough, however we want to define it, enough income or pulling X percent, probably 3 or 4% of those assets out every single year to live on. And you kind of, at that point, you don't need to work for additional income. So at the very broadest level, okay, I'm saving money. It's compounding. I'm investing. For most people, it's low cost index funds or maybe real estate. There's every possible flavor. And that money is compounding while I'm continuing to work, continuing to save. And I get to this number and I theoretically then have reached a point of financial independence. So I don't think that necessarily has changed over I guess it's weird to hear of myself as an OG in this world. But since I read Mr. Money Mustache's The Shockingly Simple Math article, which to me was the lightning bolt that started all of this. It made it concrete. It made it from something that, hey, I was just saving money, kind of blissfully unaware that there was essentially any purpose to it or that there was some end goal. So I don't think anything has changed in that regard, but I think the entire tenor of the conversation has changed. And I think the caricature of the FI community has changed a significant amount. Though, in fairness, we still have a very long way to go. There are many personal finance influencers. You hear Ramit Sethi and the Dave Ramsey's, even though Ramit is very well-meaning, but the Dave Ramsey's of the world kind of vilify FI in a sense that it's unrealistic, or it's these misers who are just wishing away decades. And I think if I could say like one thing I'm really proud of that ChooseFI, I think I'd like to believe at least, has helped change the conversation is it's not this caricature of white guys in their 30s who are in tech jobs and they're making a high income and of course they can do it. We've made this through hundreds of different people coming on our show with all their different life experiences and stories. We've made it accessible. And I think we've taken it from something that you needed to be ultra frugal, right? The early retirement extreme, Jacob Lundfisker spending $8,000 a year, whatever ridiculous amount, that's not accessible, right? When you hear that, what does a normal person do? They say, oh, that's ridiculous. When they hear Mr. Money Mustache riding his bike all around, and that's laudable. That's great. You can do that. But to me, in my suburban lifestyle, that seemed ridiculous. And I think what we've tried to do, and I think the conversation has changed, is that FI is accessible for everybody. Obviously, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. There are people who have higher incomes and people it's starting at certain places. It's always going to be easier. I'm not a fool. I'm not naive. But I think anyone pursuing financial independence is going to get benefit from it. And I think that, to me, is the biggest change in the conversation over the last 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it has moved in a direction where people asking the question of, can I experience this as a person employed in this field that isn't a tech job or finance? And being able to invite more people in and maybe add in larger parameters, or the amount of time that it might take to achieve it might be a bit longer depending on your circumstances. But it sounds like kind of broadening the community, which maybe at its core is the same, but the ways in which of doing it seem to have broadened a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary. And right, you hear all these different flavors, and I honestly thought they were kind of gimmicky when I first said the BaristaFi and the ChooseFI.
They are so fun. They're
right?
so funny.
They're amazing. Again, in my heart of hearts, I thought they were, in fairness, I thought they were gimmicky when I first heard them. But Jill, to your point, it broadens it, and there's not that one definition. It's not a race to a number on a screen, because I think when it's a race to a number on a screen, it becomes keeping up with the Joneses in a different way. We're keeping up with the FI Joneses, not the McMansion and BMW Joneses next door. And that's just not ideal.
Yeah, I would absolutely affirm that. I think ChooseFI has had an amazing influence on making financial independence more accessible and emphasizing less of the retire early and more on the actual financial benefits that come from investing and saving intentionally. But it was one of those, like, early on, it was disenfranchising to see how people just took one thing and vilified it, which was the keeping up with the Joneses overconsumption. They vilified that, and they did the same thing, but with their saving. And there was no connection between, oh, you're vilifying one extreme, but you're living in that extreme on the other side. And I think with all these different names, it's kind of like it's come to terms with that kind of disconnect and really brought it more down to earth. Like, how many different types of FI are there, do you think?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I mean, you and we could go back and forth on this. We should do a round robin. Lean FI, BaristaFi, ChooseFI, right? I mean,
I heard Flamingo FI. Is that a thing?
Ooh.
I heard that once.
I've never heard of that.
I have no idea, but I heard somebody say it and I was like, I think they're making that up.
Flamingo. Okay. I know Fat FI obviously is a big one. So yeah, there's all sorts of flavors. And I think it allows you to pursue financial independence based on your own values. And I think at its heart, that's what every personal finance decision should be. And I know I kind of like to joke, even still to this day, though I'm not as bad about it, about cars. Like, that's not my thing. So cars are not my thing. So that was always kind of my pet peeve. But I've realized some people just get an extreme amount of value out of their fancy car. And it is not my place as some random podcaster to say that you should or should not be doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, we all make choices, and you're making choices from a finite amount of income. you can always grow your income. I think that's another kind of maybe, I don't know, limiting belief that I used to have. I used to be okay, here's my job, here's my income. And that was it. I can get my 3 to 5% raises. So I thought in terms of a finite amount of income, but I think we've all seen that you can grow, you can learn new skills. I mean, it's the golden age for learning new skills, and you can salary negotiate. All of these things have crossed my plate in the intervening 6 years. But at the end of the day, for most people, you're in your job. And if you're spending all of your money, if you're spending every dollar of it, you need to make choices. And what that for most of us means is you have to cut some things and you have to determine, what do you value? And for me, it was always, I value my time, I value my freedom, and I value that much more than a fancy car or the nicest house on the block. So for me, that was a very easy decision to make, that, okay, I'm going to save money, and I'm not framing it as this is deprivation, this is akin to a diet or short-termism. This is a long-term holistic play on my life to live into the life that I want to live into, right? And so it's all about that framing. But clearly, let's be honest with ourselves. You have to make decisions and you have to make changes if you're spending every dollar. Just very simply, you can never reach a point of financial independence or even financial security if you're spending every dollar. It is the math doesn't math in essence.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think so. We talk so much about values-based spending on Frugal Friends, and as frugal people, we can talk about that. But sometimes we talk about it in like, oh yeah, you can value anything, but I will judge you if you value something that's not what I value. And in reality, like, we're talking about values-based spending so that we all have freedom to spend on what we love, not just you, but everybody else. And they can value everything, even if you don't value it. So I think we do, as frugal people, we get this bad rap for being judgmental about what people spend. And so it is eye-opening to realize, like, yeah, I mean, cars, clothes, bags, first-class flights, those can be things that people say yes to and say no to things that we're not seeing.
Right. I totally hear you. And I think a new phrase that has come across my plate is the skill of spending. And I first heard Mr. Money Mustache talk about this on another podcast, and I actually had him on. We just had a really wonderful free-flowing conversation about it. And there's really two sides of it. So there's the skill of spending on the front side of FI, early in your journey, trying to optimize your spending. Because like I said, there's a finite pot and you need to save money. But then you reach a point where, okay, maybe, and again, all three of us we're all frugal friends here, right? So at some point that becomes maybe a bit of a crutch, or not frugality of its essence, because I think frugality, there's an importance to it, a grave importance, there's significant importance to it. But I think it becomes a lifestyle. And when you get to the point where, and this is obviously a wonderful place to be, where your money is just growing significantly, and you realize, okay, there's a high likelihood I'm going to have more money than I ever need, which again, wonderful place to be. But if you're still stuck in a mentality from 15 years prior, or from when you were 22 and your net worth was $3,000 and $10 meant something to you, when you have $1 million or multiple millions of dollars, obviously $10 is a very different threshold. And I'm using that kind of as a weird example, but I think what's more important is you get to the point where life experiences are critical. And I know we talked about kids before we hit record. I have 2 daughters, and my older one is 15, and we have 3 years left with her in the house before she goes off to college. And that's a really crazy realization. And we actually just went to a Taylor Swift concert together in Pittsburgh, which was amazing. And, we, in all candor, we spent a lot of money on those tickets. And it was the best money I've ever spent in my life. And I feel 0% bad about it. And it was just almost like quasi-religious experience, like being there with 70,000 Swifties, like just singing along for 3.5 hours. And it was amazing. And that's something we'll remember forever.
That's so awesome.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Simple Truth brand makes it easy to find better for you products that are free from unwanted ingredients. From fresh produce and snacks to household cleaners and more. You won't find artificial ingredients, preservatives, or harsh chemicals in Simple Truth products. So you can fill your fridge and your home with simple, easy-to-understand choices you can feel good about. Just look for the green Simple Truth circle to get the quality items you want, free from the ingredients you don't want. Simple Truth, exclusively at Baker's.
So you're always going to have this person that's like the traditional FIRE, say 50% of their income, retire at 30 person, but it's definitely not feasible for most people. So like, how do you recommend most people start to approach or think about financial independence if they're FI curious?
Yeah. So for the FI curious, I would say, and this goes back to that caricature of the original financial independence people, when you don't see yourself in a community, you say just very logically, that's not for me. And that's for somebody else. That's for some other. That's for them. And I think when we make it a requirement, and I said that very tongue in cheek, but a requirement that you need to save 50% of your income to be in the FI community, well, most people very rightfully say that's impossible. That's obviously not for me. That's for somebody who's never made a mistake, who got this right from the time they were 22 and just locked in on it. Well, I missed the boat. I mean, that's a very logical response. But I think very clearly what my response would be is there are no rules here. We're just a community of people trying to live better lives. And we believe that the lead domino is getting your personal finances under control and then eventually starting to save money. And every little bit of money that you save and then invest and it starts compounding accrues more power and autonomy and freedom ultimately in your life. Okay. Because when you have $0 saved up and your boss tells you, hey, the workday is another half hour longer today, or worse, tells you to do something that's against what you believe in, your ethics, your morals. If your life is on the edge where you have no money saved up, you're essentially spending every dollar, what's your alternative at that point? If your life is going to crumble in 30 to 90 days, what's your alternative? I don't know that there is one necessarily. Maybe quickly find another job, but I mean, how realistic is that? But if you had $5,000 saved up, if you had 10,000, 20,000, well, your entire life is different then. Your entire set of choices are completely different at that point. And there is great power in that. And I want everybody to understand that you don't have to save 50% of income. Just start somewhere. Start with one little action to make your life better. They start compounding. I use that word a lot, but they just start rolling. And it feels good. It feels good to make a change. It feels good to move your life forward in every way. I focus on my health significantly. I'm 44 years old. I'm in better shape than I've ever been in my entire life, stronger than I've ever been. And it started probably 10 years ago when I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I kid you guys not, it came down to like my wife and I, we're from Long Island, New York. We eat Italian food all the time. And it started from, hey, we're going to start our loaf of garlic bread, which is utterly ridiculous for 2 people to eat. It's going to be a half a loaf. And then it's going to be a third of a loaf, right? I know it sounds like you both are laughing.
Oh, I get it. I love bread.
Jill is tortured.
Right here with
yeah,
you.
That sounds like torture to Jill.
Okay, well, you keep doing your thing. But but like it started there and then it just kept rolling, right? And every then aspect of, okay, I have to get my sleep under control. I have my blackout curtains and I'm looking right here. I sleep in a cold room. It's all of these things. Hundreds of tiny little changes add up to a dramatically different life. And if you think that it starts with you have to uproot your entire life and save 50% of your income, that's not the game we're playing. We're playing 1% changes. So I think most of us can make 1% changes. So Jen, I could give you a list of things that people could do, but it's beside the point almost. It's How can you make a tiny little change today to make your life better? And then you start feeling emboldened and you make another change tomorrow and another change the day after.
It sounds like freedom and flexibility to me. And you give examples on both ends of the spectrum of, okay, what happens if your work is not what you want or need it to be, and you want to step away and you've got job flexibility, which is massive. That's a big life-changing experience to be able to say, I can quit tomorrow and take 2 months to find new work. That's amazing. And what I think this also can create is the ability on the other end or within the same spectrum of being able to spend a lot of money on Taylor Swift tickets. I will co-sign that too. I think when we can identify some of those deeper whys and recognize that money is not going to necessarily buy us happiness, but it can and is necessary in finding the life that we actually want to live. It creates the freedom for the things that usually most of us value the most, the things that money can't buy, but it does require some intentionality with our finances to be able to give us the opportunities to engage in those things, whether it's job flexibility or getting first class tickets for you and your spouse to go on a nice vacation. I think it all kind of falls under this category of first beginning with intentionality for our finances as we're discovering what do we value along the way that we can allocate without shame or guilt and with plenty of cushion towards these things that really matter to us.
Yeah, that is beautifully put. I could not possibly add on to that other than to just agree with you in the sense that money in and of itself is not the thing that buys happiness. It buys that space, as you so beautifully said. And when you have the space, then you can explore, because what's the biggest stress in most of our lives? It's money, plain and simple. It's an existential issue for most people at all times. And when you have that space, you can take a step back. You can take 5 steps back and figure out, hey, what am I doing here? I get, if I'm lucky, 90 years, 9 decades on this planet. What am I doing? What's the purpose here? What do I want to spend my time doing? Who do I want to spend my time with? And it is truly an experiment. There's no easy answer. Things constantly change. I can say this from the other side of this is things are constantly changing. And it shouldn't feel like a failure when you experiment with something and you realize, hey, that's not for me. That's a really important learning lesson. So this is a constant iteration, but having that space, most of us who are going to work 8 hours a day, plus commute, plus wind down time, do we have any time to think about what we actually want out of life? We really don't.
You guys are speaking to me right now. This episode is for me because we're going through this with my husband, who we have saved money and we have been investing, and he hates his job and he wants to leave. But I'm still in this like, oh, but we have to save. We can't invest less. Like, while you take a job that may pay less, but it gives you more happiness. And I had to like hold myself and shake myself almost and be like, this is what we did this for. This right here. And so you guys just spoke to me.
You're welcome, Jen.
Thank you.
You are quite welcome.
Thank you.
Brad, speaking of iterations, I'm sure you've seen many for yourself, for other people. And maybe this is a 2-part question, but I am really interested to know where you're at, what your biggest takeaway from your own experience of financial independence would be, what you've maybe seen from others experiencing and reaching financial independence. Maybe it's 2 different things, but what do you have to say about that?
All right, I'll try to weave them together, certainly. I think, again, going back to this iteration and thought is, I think the people who I've seen almost quote unquote fail, if you will, and I say that kind of jokingly, but fail at FI are the people who thought that they were going to hit a number on a screen and life was magically going to be wonderful. And very simply, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way the human condition works. That's just not the way anything works. And you need to put in the work. And it's years and years of trial and error. And I think another way that people fail at FI is being too frugal. And I can think of Brandon, the mad scientist, is a perfect example. I hate to use like a famous person, if you will, in the FI community, but he's been very public about this, about just being too frugal. And it getting to the point where it was negatively impacting his quality of life. And him and his wife decided to have a basically frivolous year of spending. And I think they spent something, it was something ridiculous, like an additional like $2,000 to $5,000. Like that was their absolutely ridiculous amount. And their lives were dramatically better. And they realized that they were putting all that energy into being frugal over $2,000 a year, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I think there is that concern that you can be a little bit too much with us. And I guess for me, I'm in a weird spot in the sense that ChooseFI, it takes up more of my time than I probably let on, to be honest. And I think for me, I guess my biggest learning is I think in every aspect of life, there needs to be balance. And that doesn't go away when you reach FI and you all of a sudden have 16 waking hours a day, because you can fill almost any number of hours. You really can. And you need to be very intentional about your time. And I think, again, if I'm being really honest, I have not been intentional with my time. And I think it's been a negative. I know this summer is a perfect example. In theory, my favorite time of the year is the summer when I go to the pool with my girls and we swim, and it's like the best time we have. And I think I've went up to the pool with them maybe 3 times in the last month and a half. And it's just, there's always something going on. So this is not an oh, poor me scenario, because again, my little thing with ChooseFI, it's almost beside the point. But the point is you need to create some kind of balance. And I think it's hard. I mean, honestly, it's hard. You can hear it in my voice. It's not something that comes easy. You have to work on it. And for me, it's very much still a work in progress.
We call it holding the tension. I think finding balance can be really hard. You find it for a minute and then you fall off the seesaw. But holding the tension between, whether it's obligations and responsibilities and freedom and flexibility or you name it, I think having both and is helpful in this equation. And I think one of the things that we have been doing over the last 5 years with this podcast is these efforts towards redefining frugality, because I don't disagree with you. I think we can take anything too far to an extreme, and it might just be a sense of vernacular here, but it sounds as though, with the example given, that borderlined on cheap. I think we define frugality as being good stewards of our resources. And we're not being good stewards of, and not just financial resources, emotional, mental, relational resources as well. And if we are implementing a lifestyle that is depleting and hurting our well-being as it relates to relational resources, emotional resources, then that's not, in our minds, frugality. And so this kind of radical middle place of you don't have to give up all of the fun in your life right now to be able to put 50% of your money away, but you also don't have to wait until 72 to be able to have fun and live your life. Like, we can do both, maybe to different degrees, depending on our income, our lifestyles, our choices, whatever, but kind of this inclusivity that you're already talking about and have been talking about with ChooseFI, that come to the table wherever you're at, and we can create a plan that's individualized for us.
Yeah, I hear you. Radical, say that again?
Radical middle.
That's
the radical
beautiful.
Middle. Radical because no one goes there.
Yeah, everyone wants to go to the radical extremes, but really it's the middle that's radical.
That's great. I'm going to think about that for a while. I like that a lot.
So our last question, I think I wanted to direct it like in general, and you can do this if you want, but like I'm really interested in like how individuals on their journey can find that balance between enjoying the present and saving for financial independence, or maybe if you want to individualize it, maybe what you would have done differently or have been meditating on currently. Like, what are your thoughts, experiences, recommendations?
It's hard. I honestly love for us all to answer that, but this is your show, so I'm gonna play ball here and answer it. But I think for us, and in my own life, I think we probably, and it's funny, again, we were talking about kids before we hit record. I don't think we created a good enough balance in terms of, Jill, you're obviously talking about relationships and clearly like how important that is. And And I think it's easy to get out of balance in a lot of aspects of life. So like my wife and I, we don't have family, or we didn't have family for 13 years of having kids within 400 miles of us. And we literally never got a babysitter one time to like prioritize date night. And that's not to say we didn't have date nights. You know, we had family come into town every now and again, but like, I think some of our, and I don't want to use the word frugality, because I think it was more negative than that. Maybe being cheap in that regard. It was always, oh, it's going to cost us $80 for a babysitter tonight. We can just wait until grandma comes in town. And I think looking back, that was a strategic error. And I think, you know, just little things like that, just being more intentional just with every aspect. And obviously everything's fine. So nothing bad's going on here. But just thinking back, it's, you know, these things, that's the perfect example, I think, of just, it was a little bit too cheap and it impacted quality of life. And I don't think we realized it at the time.
I think any one of us can fall victim to that, of anytime that we become more aware of our spending. And I love how you highlighted spending as a skill. It's double now. We want to go on a date night, and it's going to be whatever the date night costs, and probably at least that same amount to pay a babysitter. So wherever you are on the like spending saving spectrum, if you're aware of your spending, that's a hard pill to swallow, that we're going to go on date night. It's going to cost us double than what it did pre-kids. Yeah. And I think it is, as you're talking about, then identifying, but what's the deeper value here? And we just need to get out and be together. But I appreciate what you're saying there. And I think we all need that message back to us sometimes of it's okay to spend. Sometimes we can be so focused on saving, but then what did you save for? Like probably this very thing, and it's okay to spend it now.
Yeah, it is okay to spend it. It absolutely is. And it's essential to spend it. I mean, I think it's essential to save, clearly, but it's essential to spend as well. And I think that's a message that was lost on me for a long time, even though if you had asked me during those years, I would not have said that I was a miser or cheap. I would have at the time, and I would have believed it with full intellectual honesty, that I was being intentional and that I was spending on what I valued. So, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, I realized that I was just more than a little bit off there. But it's interesting. And I think that's also part of life, right? Is we learn and we grow and we see what worked, what didn't work. And it's all part and parcel of this life experiment, where we're just figuring out and we're trying to live the best lives we can.
Speaking of an experiment that's stuck, and it's for everyone.
It's working.
It's the Bill of the Week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
All right, Brad. Every week we invite our listeners or our guests to give us their bill for the week. We know you've been looking forward to it, and we cannot wait to hear yours.
Okay, I have been looking forward to this. This is awesome. And so my bill of the week here, my bill is my friend Bill, actually. So my friend Bill.
We love it.
There's nothing wrong with your microphone. I'm just cheering.
Yeah.
Waving and flailing my arms out of excitement.
So yeah, way back when I lived in Long Island, this was probably 13, probably more than that. It was probably, almost 15 years ago. I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And that was the lightning bolt moment, one of the probably handful of lightning bolt moments in my life that, I mean, frankly, led to everything that's happened after. If I didn't read that book, ChooseFI wouldn't exist in all likelihood. But in fairness, if I didn't know my good friend Bill, none of this would have happened either, because he actually, at that time, this was the infancy of e-commerce and the internet to some degree. He had his online business. He was the only person I knew who had an online business. And actually, he had a drop shipping business, which was almost exactly what Tim Ferriss talked about in the 4-Hour Workweek. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm reading this life-changing book. And the one person I know who was an entrepreneur in my entire life had a drop shipping business. And I convinced Bill to kind of partner with me on a website. We bought a firewood storage rack website, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world. We bought this website for $512, Bill and I, and we sold firewood storage racks on the internet. I had never lit a fire before in my entire life. I'd never had firewood storage. I never had any need for this, but I sold firewood storage racks on the internet. And it was all because of Bill. And everything that happened subsequently was because of that first entrepreneurial venture.
And did this have some sort of metaphoric relationship to the FIRE movement?
Oh, that's good.
I'm like, sell firewood storage racks and then move into this ChooseFI space.
It was preordained.
Wow. That is a Bill.
Bill, man.
Good old Bill.
Yes.
So yeah, to my buddy Bill, thank you.
To Bill.
To Bill.
I'm holding
It's early afternoon, but I'm a cheers to that. Wow. If you all listening want to submit your bill, if it has to do with a friend named Bill, or you are a Bill and you're helping friends start businesses that lead to amazing life journeys, or, you know,
dollar
you
bills.
just paid off a bill. That's good too. Visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill.
Simple Truth brand makes it easy to find better for you products that are free from unwanted ingredients. From fresh produce and snacks to household cleaners and more. You won't find artificial ingredients, preservatives, or harsh chemicals in Simple Truth products. So you can fill your fridge and your home with simple, easy to understand choices you can feel good about. Just look for the green Simple Truth circle to get the quality items you want, free from the ingredients you don't want. Simple Truth, exclusively at Baker's.
It's never too late. Never too late to earn a degree. Never too late for a comeback. Between your busy career and taking care of a family, it can feel like there's never a good time to go back to school. But your time is now. Time to start your comeback with Purdue Global. As Purdue's online university for working adults, Purdue Global is dedicated to supporting adults like you who know it's time to earn the recognition you deserve. You have the experience, you have the knowledge, it's time to get credit for the work you've done. You can balance work, family, and everything in between while earning your degree. It's time to move forward in your career, for your family and for yourself, with a degree you're proud of, a degree that employers will recognize and respect. You're worth this investment in yourself to earn a degree you deserve. It's never too late. Never too late to go back to school and come back stronger with an education you can trust. Now is the time for your comeback. Start yours today at purdueglobal.edu.
And now it's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round. Pew, pew.
This is somewhat frightening.
We get animated.
Every week I'm also afraid. So with you. All right. So this is the vulnerability segment of the show.
This is the part where we will answer questions with you, Brad.
Yeah, we will answer. Yeah, we will get vulnerable
questions,
too.
Plural.
Well, it's just one question. And it is, what is one financial habit or behavior you had to change in order to make significant progress toward financial independence?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I've got one. So I put everything on autopilot. I think to me, getting your silly little monkey brain out of decision making is going to make your life better when it comes to personal finances. And we're just all prone to fear. We're all prone to listening to these fearmongers on CNBC and the like, and thinking they know better, or thinking that we know better. Somehow we're super smart and everybody else has no idea. And I'm going to sell and I'm going to buy now. And you don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. Let's be completely clear here. And the more you can put things on autopilot, just the better your life is going to be. And kind of one of my operating principles is stress mitigation. And this was the best stress mitigating move that I've ever made. So I put everything on autopilot. If I could set up bills to pay, Bill, we're back on Bill.
Yeah, we are.
If I could set up bills on autopay, I did. Credit cards, obviously. and my savings, everything. If I could set it up on autopilot, I did. And it got me to worry less and stress less. And yeah, that's been the biggest thing that I've changed.
Yeah, I can't speak highly enough about putting things on autopilot. Why need to think about it? Why have an opportunity to accidentally miss a month towards your retirement investing?
I don't think good as it is. So why have more things to think about?
Yep. Why let your brain get in the way?
Oh, mine might not be as life-changing as yours, Brad, but I have seen significant improvements in my finances. A behavior I had to change, or maybe a mindset, was I'm too busy to cook. Oh, I don't understand kitchens. I don't know what to do. I don't have time. Takeout, out to eat, just not cooking. And so this, particularly through COVID, and I would say even since the new year, I have totally turned that thing around. I'm doing meal plans bi-weekly and cooking at home, and it's phenomenal. I'm actually getting so far to the point that when I go out to eat, I'm usually disappointed. Like, oh, my chimichurri's better. Oh, I could have made that. Like, why'd they charge so much for this fried chicken? It's easy. Pasta? No way. Pasta's 50 cents for a plate. I'm not paying you $13. I know. Now I'm sounding cheap. I do get it. I do like going out to eat, but just not doing it as much. And I think especially when, we were going out to lunch recently, and just for the two of us, it's over $50 for just a sandwich and tip and tax. That for this particular season, speaking of kind of holding the tension between enjoying life and thinking about the future, is for right now, I would rather be putting more money aside for greater levels of flexibility in the future, while still saying yes to the things that are ultimately important, but realizing I really don't mind eating at home. I'm enjoying learning new skills. I like being able to share the food that I've made with friends and family. So that's a recent example for me.
That's a great one.
Yes. And I've seen your list on your fridge with all your meal options. You're really doing it.
I'm doing it.
Good for you, Jill.
Yes. Thanks.
And that saves a lot of time too. That's another major aspect of it, right? Is, we're just going to grab takeout. That sounds good in theory, but it's no matter where you live, that's in all likelihood a 20-minute little journey. And that takes time. It takes time to think, where are we going to eat from? So you're getting hours and hours back in your life.
Yeah. Not to mention, I'm often disappointed by takeout. They didn't put the sauce I wanted in there. They gave me the wrong entree. And that's just a headache I don't need in my life. If I'm going to make it for myself, I'm going to do it right.
Yeah.
You're starting to sound like me, being dissatisfied.
Yeah, well, you're rubbing off on me, Jen. How about you?
So I had several different answers. Definitely going out to eat and shifting what I thought that meant for me was one. But I think the bigger overarching change that I had to make in order to make that change was kind of believing that it was possible and worth it. Growing up, like, it was always, very minimal money, just enough money to like not be in debt and not be on welfare. And that's all we had. We had like no extra. And then I got $50,000 in debt, and I was like, oh, I've chosen a profession that won't let me make more. And so if I'm just going to I've already dug myself into a hole. So like, what's the point? And it took like meeting my husband, Travis, and like his encouragement to even believe he's the more frugal, bordering on cheap one in our relationship. And I say that kindly. It like took him to influence me to like get me to a place to believe that even taking those 1% steps and pursuing 1% changes was a possibility, and that it would be worth it. And now that we're here, like, we're not financially independent in like the traditional number sense, but we're financially secure and like we have freedom of choice. And so now I'm shifting in this new direction to live into that and be like, it is possible to live without, investing as much as possible, and it is worth it. So it's a constant like journey of the it is possible and it is worth it.
The iterations Brad spoke about. Well, Brad, this has been both a joy and a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For many of our listeners who are going to want to jump right over to hear more from you, where can they find that?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you, Bo. This was a lot of fun. I mean, I just had a ball. So absolutely love this. Yeah. So obviously you're listening to a podcast. You know how to find podcasts. Just search Choose, like make a choice, ChooseFI, and hit subscribe. It's I think it's a pretty good show. I think you'll enjoy it. So there's that. I essentially put out 2 pieces of content. So if you're interested in financial independence, listen to the podcast and get on my newsletter. So ChooseFI.com/subscribe. I personally write it. I send it out every Tuesday morning. It's a little bit of that inspiration we were talking about, those 1% differences. I get people to write in to me every single week, literally hit reply to that email and tell me what they've done to make their lives better. So I highlight 6 or 7 of those every week, and then maybe just a few quick things that I've picked up or I find interesting in the world, in financial independence, et cetera. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. I love keeping it simple.
Yes. Thanks so much, Brad. And yeah, if you didn't already know ChooseFI, which I would be surprised, go check it out.
I appreciate it.
Woo! That was a conversation. We said we were having a conversation and then we did. And I feel as though we all kind of left it with something further to ponder, which is always a beautiful thing, especially for us, because we say we do this podcast for ourselves mostly. And then for our community too. And we hope that you all got something out of this. But what an honor for us to be able to talk with someone who's been in this space for at least double the amount of time that we've been in it for. And to hear a similar heartbeat of kindness and freedom and flexibility and individuality to it is a really nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I was so looking forward to this conversation, and it fulfilled every expectation that I had, honestly. ChooseFI and Frugal Friends have been talking about similar things for years, but to different audiences. And so to have that come together, I think we've been parallel lines, and meeting today has just been so affirming, so life-giving. And I hope we have encouraged you on your financial independence journey, whether you call it that or not, whether that's the label you want or not. I just hope that we've encouraged you on your journey.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for listening. Your listen means so much to us, and also your kind reviews. They are life-giving to us also. And we want to highlight a particular kind review that we recently received from Evergreen Light, Canadian flag emoji,
Pine tree
emoji. Amazingly helpful, funny, and friendly. Thank you so much, Jen and Jill. I'm from Northern Canada and have been listening to this podcast for 2 years. Not only do I love the life hacks and guests, but your podcasts and tips have inspired me to make and keep an insanely complex monthly and year-long budget that I visit almost daily.
Whoa.
And in addition to this, that's a lot. Using your tips, I was able to renegotiate on all of our insurances, reduce bills, cut out subscriptions, make way better financial choices, and set up a second retirement investment savings account with my bank. Thank you for helping others with your friendly and funny shows. And I've now started to really, really pay attention to my grocery bills. I'm obsessed with having so much fun. Also, I gave a sushi budget class to my daughter, and now her friends are asking for the same budget classes from me, which I've also started providing. I love being able to pass along your podcast and your tips to these girls. Thank you so much. Smile emoji, clap emoji, clap emoji, clap emoji, right back at you. If I could throw at you the angel emoji, the thumbs up emoji,
hug emoji,
the strong arm emoji. Holy smokes, there's so much jam-packed in here. But first of all, I do want to highlight that this has been 2 years of you listening to the podcast. You were probably doing things prior to that, but you've accomplished a lot, which is so amazing to hear how much you've been able to do in the last 2 years, and now how you're passing it along to your daughters, and obviously doing it in a really fun way
sushi.
that they're all asking for this. Like, let me learn, let me eat good food. This is amazing.
It's now the only way I want to budget is with sushi. I've decided that now. So, yeah.
Look at the way you're inspiring us with just your one review. Goodness.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening and you enjoyed the show and you have not left a rating and review, we would encourage you and ask you to do so because it makes our day. It makes us really happy to see your reviews, especially when they are 5 stars, sometimes even when they're 1 stars. But if you love the show even more, please leave a rating and review because it helps people know what our show is all about and what they're getting themselves into. And this was a really good one. If somebody wants to reduce bills, cut out subscriptions, have sushi budget classes, then this is the show for them. Right on.
Wow. See y'all next time.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Oh, wow, Jen. I told my story that I haven't told before.
There are so many interesting, for my time, like interviewing people in the FI community, so many interesting stories of people doing so many interesting things in the name of frugality. It almost made me renounce frugality. Hearing it so much. And this was during, I had this position over the first year of the podcast. Literally, we started the podcast because I got this full-time writing job and I wanted to do something on my own that was not writing related. And so for the first year, until I was part of a mass layoff at that job, it was me interviewing these people and hearing like their real estate stories and I think the one that sticks out to me the most is this girl slept on the floor, in a tent on the floor of her garage while she was flipping a house to sell. She was doing a live-in flip. And I was like, oh my gosh. At first, I just chalked it up to this is what you do in your early 20s, you know, like this is fine. And now I'm like, what? What?
Who did I mean?
Yeah, like...
Yeah, you can get like so far down into a lifestyle that really abnormal things start to feel normal. But, you know, here I am also talking about how my husband and I lived in a 170 square foot pull behind trailer for a time to help out our finances. Like, I think there is permission to do extreme abnormal things. I think the piece for me that I can't get away from that is crucial is for a limited amount of time. I mean, unless you really love it, because there are people in the fringes of society and not disappointed with their lifestyles. But I think, encouraging people to do extreme abnormal things and calling it relatively normal within that space or encouraging you to do it for a long period of time when it's not actually sustainable is where it starts to get into some extreme places.
Yeah, I think as long as your frugality isn't negatively impacting your health or negatively impacting the people around you or just other people in general, then do you. But that was a big...
Live in that tent.
Right.
Live in that trailer.
There you go.
Say no to the takeout.
Not me.
Simple Truth brand makes it easy to find better for you products that are free from unwanted ingredients. From fresh produce and snacks to household cleaners and more. You won't find artificial ingredients, preservatives, or harsh chemicals in Simple Truth products. So you can fill your fridge and your home with simple, easy to understand choices you can feel good about. Just look for the green Simple Truth circle to get the quality items you want, free from the ingredients you don't want. Simple Truth. Exclusively at Baker's.
With the best all-inclusive vacation deals to Mexico and the Caribbean, booking your getaway with Cheap Caribbean Vacations means you have more freedom to do your deal. Whether you want to enjoy snorkeling, endless margaritas and more, or simply soak up the sun and sand in a tropical paradise, Cheap Caribbean Vacations has your deal for that. Plan and book the exact getaway you want at exactly the right price for you by using our exclusive budget beach finder. Or find a featured all-inclusive package to Iberostar Hotels and Resorts and do your deal at cheapcaribbean.com.